Opening on May 30th, 1898, is a park that everyone who loves roller coasters needs to visit. This is Kennywood, an 80-acre park located just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and this classic amusement park has 8 thrilling coasters, and here is how I rank them, followed by my prediction for what type of coaster Kennywood could add next. Coming in at number 8, of course, is the Little Phantom. Opening in 1996, this kid coaster really doesn't do a whole lot, but it's great for the younger thrill seekers. But kudos to Kennywood for calling it the Little Phantom in reference to one of their better coasters in the park, Phantom's Revenge. I love that. Number 7 is the park's classic racing coaster, simply called the Racer. Now, while I might get some hate for this lower ranking for the Racer, this is one of the few Mobius coasters that are left here in the world, and it was built in 1927. And Racer takes riders up 72 feet and features speeds of 40 miles an hour and a drop of only 50 feet. And I like the Racer, I just feel like it's not as good as the other coasters at the park. And again, it's a fun, enjoyable ride, and you get some airtime, but I've always kind of been a little bit underwhelmed with the Racer, but that's just my personal preference. But again, this is a must ride when you visit Kennywood because it's a classic coaster, and you get some great views of the steel curtain, which towers above the Racer. Exterminator comes in at number 6, and what I love about Exterminator, and it's just your standard spinning Wild Mouse, but the difference is Kennywood actually built a building around the layout, and Exterminator is completely located indoors. And while Exterminator stats really don't do a whole lot for me, it's only 42 feet tall, around 1,300 feet long, and speeds of only 29 miles an hour. What I really like about Exterminator is the fact that it is unique and it is located indoors, which adds to the overall ride experience. Plus, during Kennywood's Halloween event, Phantom Fright Nights, they run their spinning Wild Mouse in complete darkness, and that is where it's at. It's so much fun. TPR tip. Speaking of Phantom Fright Nights, this is one of the best Halloween events in the country, and I highly recommend checking it out. Not only will you enjoy some great haunted houses and scare zones, but you get to ride the coasters at night, and speaking from experience, the coasters at Kennywood are awesome during the day, but at nighttime, they really do take it up a notch, and each coaster at Kennywood is so good at night. Number 5 is the Jack Rabbit. Now, this wooden coaster, do not let the looks of this fool you, because it's not that large, it's not that tall, nor it's not that fast, but the Jack Rabbit is insane. This coaster was built in 1920, and what I love most about Jack Rabbit is the fact that there really is no lap bar. It's basically like a seatbelt and a little chain, and this coaster, you get some great airtime, especially during Jack Rabbit's famous double dip element. So if you're a fan of classic coasters and tunnels and a great double dip element on a wooden coaster, and not to mention a wooden coaster that really plays off the terrain beautifully, then Jack Rabbit has to be on your bucket list. And the crazy thing about Jack Rabbit, to put in perspective for you, is the coaster only features a lift hill of 40 feet, but the drop is 70 feet, bringing you to a max speed of 45 miles an hour. Seriously, Jack Rabbit is no joke. TPR tip. I cannot recommend enough riding Jack Rabbit in the very last row if you can. Seriously, going down that double dip in the back row is what I want to call a life-changing experience. It is so good. Now, if you're looking for some new coaster merch to wear in the park, then check out keepridingcoasters.com. I design all my own merch, and it's comfortable and yet affordable. So once again, check out keepridingcoasters.com, and I really do appreciate all the support. Number 4 is Skyrocket, the park's launch coaster. Opening in 2010, this premier ride Skyrocket 1 really is a great ride, at least the first half is. With that being said, if Skyrocket featured a better second half, it would definitely be higher up in my rankings at Kennywood. Because that first half is really good, because what I really like about Skyrocket, as soon as you leave the station, you go around a 180-degree turn, and instead of stopping for the launch, you just go right into the launch. And then you experience a 95-foot tall top hat, which you get a little bit of airtime going over. Following the top hat, you go through some cool inversions and other elements before leading to the mid-course brake run. From there, the ride is still fun, but really does lose some of its steam, and that's why I rank it as the 4th best coaster at Kennywood. TPR tip, You cannot visit Kennywood and not check out the Potato Patch, which is home to some of the best french fries that you've ever had. Seriously, Kennywood is known for the Potato Patch, so make sure you go to the park on an empty stomach, because trust me, your taste buds are going to thank me later. Now it's time to talk about the top 3 coasters at Kennywood, and number 3 would be Thunderbolt. And what I really love about Thunderbolt is the fact that this coaster doesn't look very large, so do not let the size of it fool you. Opening in 1924, this classic wooden coaster features a track length of 3,250 feet, a height of 70 feet, however, a drop of 90 feet with speeds reaching 55 miles an hour. Now let's get one thing straight. Thunderbolt is not a family ride. This is an extreme wooden coaster that offers some of the best laterals that you'll ever experience. Seriously, it is insane. Words cannot describe how great Thunderbolt really is until you ride it. And one of the first things that you're going to notice about Thunderbolt is just how unique it is. Because as soon as you leave the station, the train then travels down the ravine into a nice sized drop before turning 180 degrees and entering the ride's lift hill. Another thing that I really love about Thunderbolt is the interaction that it has with the park's Phantom's Revenge steel coaster, because that coaster offers the second drop that dives through Thunderbolt's structure. TPR tip. While you're going to find some great coasters at Kennywood, you will also find some classic rides that you have to experience. And the main one, in my opinion, is the Noah's Ark. This walkthrough attraction has to be experienced for everyone going to Kennywood. And the great thing about it is, it never really has a line. But it's so unique and so trippy, it is just plain fun. Now for the top 2 coasters at Kennywood. I love the Steel Curtain and Phantom's Revenge, and often I flip them, just like Maverick and Steel Vengeance for me, where once I ride one, I'm like, yeah, I like that better. But in the end of the day, after thinking about it long and hard, the second best coaster at Kennywood, in my opinion, would be the S&S Mega Looper Steel Curtain. And while I do think this is the ugliest coaster in the world, and yes, that's partly because I'm a Cincinnati Bengals fan, so hoo day. And a funny story is, every time I go to Kennywood to ride this coaster, I'm always wearing my Bengals merch. And while Steel Curtain has not been in operation for what seems like forever now, hopefully S&S and Kennywood are fixing all the problems, so that way this coaster can reopen sometime in 2025. Because it's crazy to think that this massive coaster has not operated since July of 2023. But what I love about Steel Curtain is the trains. I think the trains are rather comfortable, and they're really cool looking since they're themed to a football. But throughout the 4,000 foot long coaster, you're going to experience 8 inversions according to RCDB. And Steel Curtain offers a lift hill of 220 feet, and trains reach a speed of 75 miles an hour. The first element that you're going to experience on Steel Curtain is the Dragonfire Dive Drop. And it's like top 3, top 4 inversions for me. This transition is so wicked because you're so high and it's so beautifully executed. It really just starts off the ride on a high note. And there's really nothing that I do not like about Steel Curtain. I really think this is a solid addition to Kennywood, but the problem is, again, they cannot keep it open. So hopefully they'll figure it out, because Steel Curtain is one of the best coasters not only in Pennsylvania, but in North America when it comes to inversions. Because again, there's 8 or 9, because Kennywood themselves officially labeled Steel Curtain featuring 9 inversions. So whether it's 8 or 9, who's counting? You get flipped upside down a ton of times on this awesome coaster, and I love it. And that lift hill is so steep, it's absolutely insane. And the placement of Steel Curtain is really great because Kennywood's located right by a giant ravine down to the river. So when you're going up the lift hill for this, you look off to your right and you're looking like way down to the factories and the river below. It's really kind of intimidating, and I love it. Coming in at number 1 is Phantom's Revenge, the old aerial coaster that turned Morgan, and this ride does not let up, and it's smooth, solid, and features some amazing airtime, and arguably the best mid-course drop on any coaster ever created. This is Kennywood's staple coaster, and it's been in operation since 1991. When it first opened up, it featured 4 inversions, overhead restraints for the trains, and it just beat the crap out of people. But then, during the 2000 and 2001 off-season, Morgan was brought in to make some modifications to the coaster. And thank God they did, because if they never did that, then Phantom's Revenge honestly would not be around anymore, and that would really suck because Phantom's Revenge is phenomenal. Even though the first drop is one of the weaker parts of the ride, that second drop down the ravine is 228 feet, which really is crazy considering that the lift hill of the coaster is only 160 feet. Riders are going to reach a top speed of 85 miles an hour, and while there's no inversions, you're going to experience some amazing airtime with some of the best trains out there. It's just a little lap bar, so you're out of your seat on Phantom's Revenge more than you're in it. But the highlight really is that second drop as you just dive down through Thunderbolt's supports and then turn to the left, and then you go through like an overbank turn, and then you go underneath another tunnel around the classic turtle attraction, and then it's airtime heaven till the brake run. This coaster hauls from start to finish, and it's a top-notch ride during the day. Then at nighttime, it's gonna blow your mind. So now let's talk about what I can see Kennywood adding in the future as their next coaster. And I really feel like a lot's going to be centered around Steel Curtain and what comes from this. Will the coaster ever reopen? I really hope so, and I do think it will. But in the back of my mind, I often wonder just what Kennywood has up their sleeves with this coaster if they cannot fix the issues that the ride currently has. Kennywood has already reimagined Steel Phantom into Phantom's Revenge, so could we see the same treatment for Steel Curtain? And while I would hate to see some of the loops removed, I would love to see a massive new hypercoaster open up at the park. Just saying. But not to scare you, because I think that's the last resort for Kennywood, but I feel like the next coaster could come from Vekoma, and I think a Vekoma suspended thrill coaster makes a ton of sense for the park. Currently, Kennywood does not offer an inverted coaster, and I feel like Vekoma could build Kennywood a crazy layout that features a few inversions, some air times, some near misses, and low to the ground elements. I have always loved this fit for Kennywood, and Vekoma suspended thrill coasters really don't cost a lot of money, so I think this is a solid fit for the park. Speaking of Pennsylvania, if you're curious as to how I rank the top 10 best coasters that you're going to find in Pennsylvania, then the video at the bottom of your screen is just for you. With that being said, how do you rank the coasters at Kennywood, and what are your predictions for the park going forward as their next coaster? You know what to do, let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you all so much for watching. Remember to smile today, think positive, and keep riding coasters.